Honestly, the biggest challenge is just getting the word out because local coordinators don't really have an advertising budget. So, you have to find creative ways of just getting the word out that we're looking for families.
All right, welcome everybody to the Living in Denver podcast, and I am super excited today. We like to talk all things Denver, from real estate, small businesses, community leaders, advocates, things like that. And today I'm joined by Bridget Malfer. She is the regional director for the Council of Educational Travel, which places exchange students, which is a fabulous program. And we've actually had some friends that have taken part of this. It's been huge in their life. And it's been great. So I'm really excited to get to dig into things, ask some questions. And if you're looking for, wondering what it's like to host an exchange student or have questions there, you're going to want to tune in. But welcome, Bridget. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a lot of questions, and I know our audience, I'm sure, has a lot of questions here. Ranging from how this program even starts, how long it takes, what challenges people can expect. But I know you have a rich history in several fields, that have led you to where you are today. But why don't you kind of fill us in, fill our audience in? Who are you? How did you come to be here in Colorado doing what you're doing? And yeah, feel free to start wherever you want to start.
All right, cool. So, I grew up in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And then went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and that's where I met my husband. And then we traveled around, many moves with the Air Force, some overseas, and eventually made our way back here to Colorado, which we're thrilled about. Along the way, in 2013, I started working for CETUSA. As a local coordinator. And I was attracted to that, obviously, because of all the travel I've done and experiencing different cultures and stuff. And that's been fun. And it's been a job I've been able to move around the country with, because we're a nationwide organization. So I started in Arizona in 2013, and then we moved to Texas, and I was there for 6 years, working as a local coordinator, and as a side job, because I also, along the way, got my degree in marriage and family therapy, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I've worked a lot in different areas, mostly with kids and teens. So the exchange, working with teenagers is a good overlap with that. But then we came back to Colorado in 2021, and thrilled to be back and living in Larkspur. So I've been working with the high schools in my area, and just recently stepped into the regional director position for Colorado. So now I, besides placing exchange students as a coordinator, I also supervise the other coordinators in Colorado, which there are just a handful of us. We've got a few up in Fort Collins, one who just moved to Erie. We've got one in Englewood, a couple in the mountains, and then me down here in Larkspur. So we're looking to grow our area with coordinators and place as many exchange students as we can.
Yeah. So tell me, so you said that a few times, coordinators, for those who don't know. I have a little bit of experience with the exchange program, but what is a coordinator? What do they do?
So our local coordinators find families interested in hosting an exchange student for a school year or a semester, and then go through the whole process of interviewing the families, helping them find a student, coordinating with the school to make sure the school has slots for exchange students, because the schools and districts all vary as far as how many students they take and what their criteria are and what their placement season is. And so that's part of the coordinator's job too. And then once they do all that to complete the placement, then the local coordinator also supervises while the student is here. So they do monthly check-ins with the student and the family and the school while the student is here. Make sure everything is going well.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like very many coordinators for a state. Like, I mean, because I know the friends that we have, like that one school probably has 10 to 15 kids on an exchange program. That's just one school that I know of. So
Right.
they have just a
Yeah.
few, like along the Front Range, maybe, and a couple in the mountains. Like that doesn't seem
Yeah.
like a whole lot of people managing a whole lot of kids.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of other programs out there, and you've probably heard of some of them. Um, so we are bigger. Our program is bigger, I would say, in the Midwest. Our main office is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we have a big base there of coordinators, and then kind of expanding out from there in the Midwest. And but we have coordinators in most states in the country now, but some areas
Gotcha.
are still growing. Where I came from in Texas, we had lots of coordinators and lots of different areas of Texas. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it kind of varies. But I do think we're one of the best. We CETUSA consistently rates as one of the best organizations as far as our contact with the schools and the kind of students that we have. We screen very carefully for our students, and I think we tend to have fewer problems than a lot of the other organizations, from what I've heard.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you've kind of bounced around in the country a little bit, kind of had your choice or options of what you wanted to do. Why back here in Colorado specifically? I know Larkspur isn't really, the Denver metro area, but gosh, in 20 years it might be. Why land back here? What was the drawback for Colorado to you?
Well, since my husband and I both attended the Air Force Academy, we really fell in love with the area, and as did many of our classmates. So a lot of friends back here. We love going to the Air Force games. I was a cheerleader when I was at the Air Force Academy, so that part's fun. And yeah, and my husband flies for United Airlines, so he was able to come back to fly out of Denver
Yeah,
doing that. So basically, we chose this area to be kind of in between the airport and the Air Force Academy.
yeah.
So we looked around at Castle Rock and Larkspur and Castle Pines and even
Yeah.
Monument, but we found like the perfect house here in Larkspur. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great area. We head down that way all the time and a little bit west of there camping, occasionally. So
mhm.
yeah, we know it well. But on the exchange program, like, why don't you give us that 10,000 foot overview of kind of what the process looks like for, let's say, the host family in particular, right? Because I know there's a few different
Mhm.
angles you can look at it from the kids angle, from the host family angle, from the school angle. But for the host families in particular, like, what does this process look like? Like, how long does it take? How intensive is it to apply for the program, to get a kid placed with you? Like, yeah, what does that look like?
Okay. So, like, from the time a family expresses interest in hosting, um, one of the first things the coordinator has to do is find out what school zone they're in. And the nice thing around here is with school choice, often there are, several choices of schools to check in with, but the coordinator needs to reach out to the school and find out if they still have slots available for an exchange student, or how many students they accept, what their criteria are. Like, some schools say they have to be 16 by a certain time, or they have to have certain English scores, or um, things like that, different criteria. And then also, schools or districts may have a deadline of when they'll start accepting applications and also when they stop. So, one good thing is Denver Public Schools are accepting applications through mid July. And most of the schools still have slots available, so that's a good thing. Some of the other areas will stop accepting like in April or May sometimes. So we reach out to the school. We send the host family a link to an online application that they can fill out at their leisure, and that includes, basic info about their family, and photos, of their home and rooms, and it includes a criminal background check of everyone over 18 in the family. And coordinator also sets up an in-home interview with the family, where all family members need to be there and sign that they are on board with hosting an exchange student. Um, yeah, and then the coordinator also helps find a student for the family, and that's the really fun part, because we get over 1,000 student applications in our database. So we can do all kinds of fun searches for whatever whoever might be a good fit for the family, if they're into certain sports or outdoor activities, or if they'd really like to host a student from a certain country. So I can go in with all kinds of keywords and things, and find multiple students to match them up with, and send them student profiles. Even now, most of our students make little videos about themselves, and those are fun to watch. Um, so we do that, help them pick out a student. Once they pick out a student, then we submit the paperwork to the school. The school has to sign that they'll accept that student. And then all that goes to the natural parents of the students, to approve, the placement. So they get to look at all that and say, okay, I think this family, this school, this area, you know,
Yep.
will work for us, and they accept. And um, then between then and when the student arrives, the coordinator does an orientation. They call it a pre-arrival orientation. So just meeting up with the family one more time before the student gets here, to kind of go over the rules and prepare them for the student's arrival.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the student arrives, there's a post-arrival orientation, kind of more for the students to go over the rules, make sure they understand about their insurance and all that kind of stuff, safety issues and all that. And then it's just the monthly supervision, which every other month will just be a phone call with a list of questions for the student, for the host family, and then the coordinator also checks in with the school to make sure that the student is passing all their classes, has good attendance, and no issues. So, and then the months in between are face to face. So those start like November, then January, etc. Will be a face to face meeting with one of the host parents and the student. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically like the whole process right there.
Yeah. And that doesn't seem like that's very long. So if they're accepting applications till like the middle of summer, and school's starting, and I know our daughter who's going
August,
into high
yeah.
school now, like things are ramping up in mid-August, if not early August for
Right.
some things. Like
Yeah.
that's a pretty quick turnaround,
Yeah,
to
that
go across seas.
right. Yeah, it can be a little tight at the end for
Yeah.
uh, placements that get completed in the late summer. But we actually start the placement season in October of the year
Yeah.
before. So that makes it a little more leisurely, if we do the placement in October, November, December, and then um, there's a lot of time in between there. So it's not
Yeah.
quite as rushed, but
Yeah. And so for those of you listening here, I know, talking about selecting a kid, and I think it sounds odd on the surface, right? If you've never experienced it before, but I can say from personal experience when our friends have hosted, several exchange students, and they realized at, the second one they wanted to host how important some of those things were. And the one that came up was skiing, right? Because they're avid skiers themselves. They do 25 to 40 days a year. They've got a mountain property. They're up there every single weekend, and they didn't realize how big of a part of a life it was for them, and that if they didn't have someone who skied or knew how to ski, had ski gear, like there was going to be a big gap in those weekends, for
Right,
for that
right.
kid.
Yeah,
And so on the surface, it might sound a little odd, like selecting a kid and what they're interested in, but like that stuff is extremely important for our daughter. It would be into sports and soccer and things like that. Like that bonding, I'm sure, with other kids in the household, if there are other kids, uh, is a big deal.
right, right.
They become part of your family, like
Yeah.
and you become attached to them. So with the parents, like the parents of the exchange students, how much are they incorporated into this process? Are they kept out a little bit? Like, can they deny families? Like, is it the whole family making this process, or is it more up to the kid?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, from what I understand, it's a whole family process. But like as a coordinator, we don't usually have direct contact with the students' natural parents. Like it
Hmm.
kind of goes through the chain up to the main office, then through the agent in the student's country, and then to their parents. So
Yeah.
okay, sometimes like once after the placement has been complete and accepted, I'll have natural parents like reach out to me with questions because they'll have my information then. So they may have questions about the school or different things and send me an email, and I can correspond that way. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but they
Interesting.
they do have some leeway to accept or not accept. Usually they accept.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So with that, challenges you might face, I could see there being a myriad of things that could come up that are probably new daily, right? We're human beings, right? Things
yeah.
happen, people are different, personalities are different. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you find with finding host families, specifically here in Colorado?
Um, Honestly, the biggest challenge is just getting the word out because local coordinators don't really have an advertising budget. So,
Hmm.
you have to find creative ways of just getting the word out that we're looking for families um, and what our program is about. So, a lot of us use social media, obviously, posting to Facebook groups and next door neighbor and, all those kind of things. Putting flyers around local community bulletin boards or churches or when schools will allow it, visiting schools and stuff like that. But sometimes because there's so many competing uh, exchange organizations, the schools
Hmm.
won't do that because they don't want to play favorites. um, so yeah, that
Interesting.
can
I
be a
would
little
never
hard.
have thought that there was
Yeah,
competing exchange programs. Right,
right,
looking at
right.
it from the outside, like you make certain assumptions about things, and because the
Yeah,
schools don't advertise it, right? Because I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, well, why don't schools like I could see there being a massive benefit for schools
sure.
to have exchange student programs, and I'm assuming not all schools have exchange programs. Would that be right, or am I wrong there?
I would say most do accept exchange students. It just
Okay.
varies how many.
Yeah.
Um, some of the bigger schools with already a huge attendance may cap it, at, oh, we'll only take 5 or 6. Sometimes they'll do a percentage of their student population that they accept.
Yeah.
Where other, like sometimes smaller schools in smaller areas will not even put a limit on it. But sometimes in those areas, it's just harder to find host families.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it varies. But like in Prescott, one of my schools would let me come in and set up a table at lunch with, exchange student profiles and all kinds of stuff. And they wanted as many exchange students as they could get for their little rural school because it
Yeah.
was great for their students. So
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
varies. Yeah. Another thing a lot of us do is, if we can get a spot at like a craft fair or farmers market or something like that, set up a little table with all our information,
Yeah.
things like that can get the word out too.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, diversity. When we looked at schools, like I grew up in Chicago, right? There was no such thing. Choice in didn't happen. Like there were a few random kids who didn't live in your neighborhood that went there.
Yeah.
But I was also from Chicago, and diversity was a huge thing in Chicago. And then you move to Denver, and you're like, whoa, we are not nearly as diverse. And so when we were looking at schools, elementary into middle school, that was a big thing for us. And, to have that diversity, different cultural backgrounds, how kids are
Hmm.
raised, like it plays a big impact. So I could see, that school, why they're interested in it, because it is beneficial to
Right.
see,
Yeah.
big time,
Yeah. And
so
I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, and we had an exchange student every year, and sometimes they were the most popular kids in school because they were friendly. Everybody wanted to get to know them, and yeah,
yeah.
it was great.
So then culturally
So,
wise, like, what challenges, and maybe you don't see it in your position as much. I don't know how hands on. I mean, you have the monthly calls with the kids and the families, but like there's got to be some adaptation. If you're 16 years old, like you probably only
mhm.
know your lifestyle, and you might not have ever even been to another country before, right? Like
Right,
that's a possibility. I'm sure the kids at attracts are a little bit more outside the box, but everybody thinks they can handle something until they're in the midst of it, right? That
right.
8 hour flight happens, 12-hour flight happens, all by yourself, going to another country,
Yeah.
meeting a random family that you've only seen pictures of and talked to on the phone. Culturally wise, challenges that students face, what is there something typical that you see? Is homesickness a big deal? Like, talk to me about that transition a little bit that kids have. Is it really a big struggle, or do most kids adapt really well?
I would say most adapt really well. Um, One of the biggest struggles that comes to mind is for like a lot of the European students, Scandinavian European students, they're used to being very independent, like they can use public transportation, or they're in very small towns where they can hop on their bike and just go wherever they want. And so that's a little bit different here for most of the students,
Hmm.
even if they're in a more urban area. um, Under our program, they're not allowed to use public transportation unless it's to get to school. They have to get special approval for that. So that's a little different. Then they're less independent. They have to depend on their host family to, drive them places and stuff. And especially if they're kind of out in the country, that's a very big difference. So
Yeah.
it takes a while for them to get used to that. And in fact, one of my Spanish students this year, one of the things she said she looked forward to, getting ready to go home, was just to be able to hang out with her friends and use public transportation and go wherever they want. So
Yeah. Yeah,
she
we're not
definitely
really
missed
set up
that.
in Denver for public transportation in general. Like some of
Yeah,
the big cities in the US are, like public transportation is not great here.
yeah,
So I could see that
right.
being a challenge. I know our friends who had a student in from Spain too. I remember she like lived at night. Like she was up till 1, 2 in the morning almost every day. Like that was just
Hmm.
more, they didn't eat dinner until 9 or 10 o'clock. Like it was just
Right.
a totally different shock. But yeah, she
Yeah.
was extremely independent now that I think
Right.
about it.
Yeah, and that's another one of the differences too. In a lot of those countries, uh, the kids can drink earlier, and
Hmm.
they'll be going out to clubs at age 15, 16. Um, to late hours. So obviously they can't do that here. One of our
Yeah.
rules is no drinking, and not even they're not even supposed to be at parties where other people are drinking underage. So,
Yeah.
but that's something they have to sign for and accept and understand that, even though they can do it at home, they can't do it while they're here on our program. And
Yeah.
And I really, I haven't gotten complaints really. Last year there was a student from Denmark who did admit she kind of missed that, being able to party with her friends, but
Yeah.
she was okay with not doing it for this period of time because she knew once she got back she could do that whenever she wanted. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I got
not a
to think
huge
we're
deal.
like in the bigger picture in cities across the country, like I think of all the big cities that I know, right? You got Chicago and New York and LA and San Francisco and Seattle. Like Denver is what's the competition like from city to city? Like the kids I'm assuming request what city they want to go to, like, and where do we fall on that scale? Are we high on that scale for where kids want to be placed, or do they not have as much decision making power in where they're placed in the program?
Good question. So the students, as part of their application, they can request that they pay extra to request an area choice. So they can request a state, they can request a city, they can request to be like in a metro area, which means 50,000 population, 50,000 or more, with within a certain uh, distance from that. Um, what else? Yeah, they can request like East Coast or West Coast or Central or things like that. So each has a little different fee that goes along with it. So like for this year, we had I think 3 students who requested Colorado. Um, we've placed all of those so far. Our
Mm-hmm.
Colorado choice students. We had 1 or 2 that requested Fort Collins, um, which yeah, it's maybe a surprise. But since we've had several coordinators up there for a long period of time, by word of mouth, a lot of students go back and they had such a great time at their school or whatever that gets passed along. And so other students from their
Yeah.
school or their country are like, oh yeah, I want to go there. So, yeah, so we still have one Fort Collins choice student that we're trying to place up there. She's a girl from Italy,
Yeah.
so working on that. But yeah, and then we get a lot to request, obviously California, because they see American culture, of course, in TV and
Mm-hmm.
movies, and California's a huge part of that. So,
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
um,
So with from my experience in the friends that we have had, that have placed exchange students, I've noticed a trend amongst the kids who are placed, and they seem to be fairly high achieving, right? They seem to be fairly outgoing. Within minutes, like they're not, our family will go over and visit them or go skiing over the weekend, and like it's like they meld in almost instantly, like they're a cousin or a nephew or something like that, like right off the bat. Is there kind of a trend with the kids who sign up for these exchange programs? Do they tend to be the higher achieving, more outgoing kids, or is that just the experience that we have, from my small limited view of the program?
no, I would say that's accurate. They need like I said, we screen them for academics and for English. They have to have minimum English scores. So, if you think about it, by the time they're a sophomore, junior in high school, they have to be proficient enough in English to be able to come and take regular classes here because they're not allowed to take ESL classes. They have to be able to get by in all the normal classes speaking
Yeah.
English. So that's a big deal right there. You have to put a lot of work to get to that level in
Yep.
another country. Um, and yeah, so they have to have that minimum scores on an oral English test and a written English test. And um, I think it's have at least a B average in school, at home. And then, of course, they're screened for maturity. They have to get
Hmm.
letters of reference from their teachers and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
um,
I've,
yeah,
I've
and I
also
and I
heard.
think just also the personality type that would be willing to to
Yeah.
leave home and go to another country, like you said, and with this if family they've never met, that takes a certain amount of extroversion usually to
Yeah.
have the confidence to do that.
Yeah. And I have heard that our schools are way easier than any of the
Hmm.
kids I've met from the exchange program. I mean, there's one,
Yeah.
our friends right now, they have a kid from Germany, and she's very advanced in all of her classes, but she will have to retake, and it was so important to her to do this program, to be here in the States and kind of visit. They don't count in Germany. This is a school year for her.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, she's a junior in high school, I think, something like that, or a sophomore, I forget. She will have to go back and she will have to do that grade again in her school,
Right.
and that blew me away.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And not all of them do that, but that applies to the Scandinavian countries and Germany and a bunch of other ones. They basically treat it as a gap year, and then they go back. But some of the countries like Italy, Spain, Brazil, what else? Thailand, I think, they do count it. So then they need to, at the end of the program, get their transcripts convalidated and sent to their school. And so they have to be a little more picky about what classes they take and everything. So the
yeah,
credits transfer. Um, but yeah, it's a little more fun for the ones who don't count it because they can take a lot more fun electives and stuff, which they
yeah,
love because most of the countries don't have electives like we have here in such a variety. Most of the countries are much more serious academically with their subjects. A lot of them don't even have any sports in the schools.
wow,
Everything would be outside of school. So it's kind of a
interesting.
treat for a lot of the kids. Like you said, it's kind of easy here because it's so strict in their countries. So they can come, once they get past kind of the steep learning curve of doing everything in English, then they get comfortable with it and usually have a pretty easy time in their classes and can take fun electives. And so
Oh, that's
it's a
awesome.
neat experience for them and try lots of different sports. I mean, some of them will try different sports or clubs every season. And yeah, that's just a lot of things that they don't get to do in their home countries.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's it's fascinating. We always feel like we're giving someone the third degree. You know what I mean? Like they come over and they had a student from Kazakhstan, which ignorantly I know nothing about. Like I have no
Same.
idea how big it is. Like the basic things of like how school goes there. Is it 5 days a week? Like do you have holidays like we do? Like all those little things. Diets and what that's like and how do we eat in comparison to you guys. And so it's always funny asking all of these questions because once you start and they open up, I feel like it's just like rapid fire,
Yeah.
and they're
Right.
mostly really really easy to work with and talk to, and it's fun. We
Hmm.
love it. But I know in our own family, right, we have conflicts that come up, and stuff happens and things get emotional, and we're working with young adults here, that I'm sure things can get emotional. I'm sure conflicts come up, right, with exchange students. Are there any stories or anything that you can share with us, like things that can go wrong, things that have gone wrong? Like, how do you guys step in, help out? Um, and yeah, things can happen in life. So,
Sure.
how do things happen with exchange students? Does it happen like that? And how do you fix issues that come up?
Well, luckily, usually the issues that come up are minor. Um, and a lot of it is about communication and expectations and stuff. And so, part of the job of the coordinator is to mediate that kind of stuff. So, um, I would say something that's pretty common is even though we try to tell host parents not to do this, not to treat the student like a guest in their home and, wait on them and do all that. Sometimes it just happens that way. They're not comfortable, like, you know, asking them to help with dishes or help with preparing meals or whatever. So they start in a pattern where they're treating the student as a special guest, but then they start to get resentful that they're doing all this extra work and the student isn't pitching in. Um, so that's just kind of miscommunication where, I'll come in and kind of mediate. Hey, you need to do your share like a family member, and help with the dishes and offer to help with cooking the meal, and make sure you're cleaning up after yourself, and those kind of things. And usually that's pretty easy to fix before
Yeah.
it gets out of hand, as long as the host parents talk about it before they really get resentful about it. um, so that's one. um, Sometimes there can be issues with um, host siblings.
Mm.
So, like, sometimes families will have an expectation if they have a teenage, typically it's teenage daughter, and they're hosting a teenage girl, and they think they're going to be best friends and they're going to
Mm.
do everything together. And sometimes that happens and that works out great. Sometimes they just aren't a good fit. They don't have the same interests. Maybe they get along at first, and then the exchange student makes other friends that she gets along with better. And so that can create a little conflict that you
Sure.
have to work through. And just um, but so that's a big part at the beginning for host families, that I have to talk about with them, just to be careful of their expectations, because the student might be a little different than they are on paper, and they may, even though they say they have all these interests, they might get here and want to try something different. So if you
Yeah.
think they're going to play basketball with your son and be best buddies, the student might get here and want to try a different sport. And so you have to be able to be flexible about that, about the expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And occasionally there are bigger issues. Like, I had a student one year in Texas who he kind of got in with the wrong crowd, and his friends were skipping out of some classes in the middle of the day. And it was a big school, so they weren't reporting that to the host parents until I did my monthly check-in, and the counselor's like, well, he missed a lot of classes. He's got like
Mm.
10 absences from these couple classes. And it's like, and the host mom had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, it's, you write up a contract and you sit down with them and they have to sign, hey, I'm going to attend every class. If I don't, I'm going to get sent home early. We call it
Yeah.
get their uh, contract reviewed, I think we call it. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
But
They're
that
still
student,
kids,
he
right?
shaped up right away. As soon as
Yeah.
he heard, you can't do this or you'll get sent home, then he attended
Yeah.
every class.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. They're still teenagers after all.
right, exactly.
It's like stuff's going to
Exactly.
happen. So,
Yeah.
um, from the host family aspect, like when you're talking to host families, I'm sure there can be a myriad of reasons, but like, what's the biggest reason you see host families want to actually host an exchange student? Because I mean, really, you're letting an additional person into your house. You have to feed someone else. You have to cater to someone else's schedule. Which, as we all know, as your kids get older, we think it's going to get easier, but it really doesn't until they're off to college. It gets tougher and tougher until they can drive on their own.
Yeah.
Like, why do most host families want to host an exchange student?
Um, it's a variety of reasons. Um, I think a lot of the host families are folks that have traveled a lot and experienced a lot of other cultures, and you know um, they like that idea of bringing someone in from another culture, maybe even someplace they've lived or visited before that they really enjoyed. A lot of times they want to expose their kids, to another culture, and interact with someone that way. Some of our host families have been exchange students themselves, and want to offer that to someone else, or um, like me, had good friends in school who were exchange students and thought that was a great program. Yeah, I mean, most are motivated to share the American lifestyle with an exchange
Mm-hmm.
student. Um, Sometimes empty nesters, miss having a teenager in the house, and like that idea of having someone that they can, um, share their local area with, and all the attractions and things in their local areas. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole variety.
That's awesome. So what tips or advice can you give? What tips or advice can you give to a family that's either already committed hosting or is going to want to be hosting an exchange student? Like, what can you tell them to prepare for this? For kind of some best practices.
Hmm. Well, like I said, watch your expectations, because you never know what the experience is going to be like. They may not be best friends with your kids. They may not be as passionate about the interests that you have, that you think. So you want to be open to that. They may expand to other friends, other interests, because while they're here, they a lot of times they want to try different things, different sports, different activities. So being flexible about that. Also, like I said, you want to treat them as part of the family. Don't set yourself up by treating them like a VIP guest and waiting on them hand and foot when they get there, because they're gonna be like, well, sure, this is great.
Yeah.
I don't have to do my laundry, I don't have to do my dishes, I don't have to help with anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are a couple of the big ones. Otherwise, just you want to
Yeah.
enjoy it. And one of the common questions families ask is about traveling. Can we
Mm.
travel with our exchange student? And that is absolutely allowed, and encouraged. And most of the students are willing to do that, and they know, they our students come with their own spending money for outside expenses. Um, So for like an extra trip, say I don't know, I've had families go on a cruise and take their exchange student, but
Wow.
part of that is the family isn't expected to pay for that, so they have to put in that request. We have a travel form that we send, and basically you fill out where you'll be, what you'll be doing, and how much it will cost for the student, and then it's up to the student and their natural parents, whether they're willing to pay that. And usually they are, because they want to experience everything they can while they're
Sure.
here. So um, yeah, so then in that case, the parents will send uh, the extra funds needed for whatever the trip is. Like when we hosted, we were in Texas, and we knew we would be coming back to the academy for our reunion that year. And so, ahead of time, we kind of put that out there to see if she would like to come to Colorado with us, for our reunion. And so, yeah, they agreed to that, and,
Yeah.
agreed to pay for the plane ticket and stuff. And so, yeah, she had a great time, got to see the academy and, hang out, go to the game and all the events with us. And so that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
So,
Awesome. Well, I know we've kind of dug through a lot, but inevitably there's way more questions that anybody will have. If they have questions about your program, more specifics, like what's the best way to reach out to you and your organization? Is it you or is it a team member? Like, what's the best way someone can reach out to you?
um, so for me, my email is Bridget.Malfer, and I know that's a hard one to Bridget, Bridget, Malfer is Malfer, and then it's at CETUSA, CETUSA.org. Or you can go to the CETUSA website, which is CETUSA.org. And if you are applying as a host family or whatever, you'll get connected to me or whoever the closest coordinator is to your area. Um, yeah.
Great.
What else? I'm also on Facebook. Bridget Burton Malfer on Facebook. So,
Great. And
and
we
I
will
post
have
to a lot
all
of
of
local groups.
Good deal. Yeah, we'll have all of your contact information below in the description here on the screen. So,
Great.
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, feel free. Reach out to Bridget with whatever questions you got. And thanks for joining us once again. I wish you a great next year with a lot more amazing kids coming to visit because I love the program myself from what I've seen, and hopefully it continues to be a success. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, until the next time.
All right. Thanks so much.